My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
It is Judd's Hockey Show. It's Judd, it's AJ, as always, and we are doing this one on a Thursday because there is news as the NFL Draft approaches. Free agency begins next Tuesday. The wheeling and dealing has started. We have news, and we'll talk about a trade of Freddy Gaudreau to the Seattle Kraken. But, AJ, let's start with this one. Last night, and your reaction was priceless. Fitting, but priceless. So last night, we get the report, and then it's confirmed by the teams that the Sabres traded pending restricted free agent JJ Peterka, a guy that we know that the Wild was very interested in. Mm-hmm. They traded him, the Sabres did, to the Utah Mammoth for forward Josh Doan and right-handed shooting defenseman Michael Kesselring. So those two are going to New York, and JJ Peterka, who then signed a contract extension immediately, so he is not an RFA now, is traded to Utah. All right. You actually, I think, sent me the news of this trade, so I would like to give you the floor to talk about what you think of JJ Peterka in the Wild sites, and we'll get to that in a second, but what the return was for him.
Yeah, the return from him was Josh Doan, who, if you remember back when he was drafted, it was this whole, because they were still the Arizona Coyotes at this time. So, he's following in Shane Doan's footsteps. He's going to be an Arizona legend, a Coyote legend, blah, blah, blah. They move. Now there's really no attachment there and everything like that. So I think promising talent, you don't know what he's going to be. Will he ever get to the level of what Peterka did this past season and looks to be doing? Maybe, probably not, if we know how prospects kind of pan out. Kesselring, though, right-handed defenseman, he feels like, and this is a guy that maybe lower on my radar because he kind of seemed to really blossom during last season. And he has a name that's like, he's been around for a decade. He's 25. Like, he is a young guy. So it's, on initial reaction, it's like, okay, this is a bad return for the Sabres. But then you hear about what other teams are offering, and then they turn those down. And you're like, this was an awful return for the Sabres. I genuinely feel bad for Sabres fans because they are going to go, 20 years now, I think, without the playoffs if something doesn't happen this season. And it seems like they just cannot get out of their own way management-wise. You have the top trade target, I think, for most people this offseason, an RFA and JJ Peterka, who looks to be explosive, dynamic. He can push play. He's pro built. He's got these tools. And then you're going to send him out for what feels like you're exchanging a dollar bill for, change. And that change doesn't even really add up to $1. The guy's like, maybe I'll get you a nickel or another dime here later down the road. It's a tough look, I think, for the Sabres, and one that, unless they make another move here, you can't really say that this wasn't a win for Utah. Utah, I think, on immediate reaction, won this trade, and they're going to now, reap the benefits of signing him to a 5-year deal.
Peterka, though, is considered more of a wing than a center, correct?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So like, we're not talking about a center here. I'm not saying he's not good. 77 games in 24-25.
Yeah. If I misspoke and said center, I apologize.
No. But I'm just saying definitely in the Wild sights is a center.
Yes,
Peterka,
absolutely.
27 goals, 68 points with a bad Buffalo team, 77 games in really 3 complete seasons, 67 goals, 150 points in 238 games. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting, though, then, is Michael Russo of The Athletic reporting that the Wild, who, again, like Peterka a lot, offered center Marco Rossi as the main piece in a trade, and were willing to include a roster player or futures. The Sabres said no. Now, I have not read the complete story yet. You have. What is the explanation for why this broke down from a Wild standpoint in dealing with the Sabres?
Well, I'm going to piece together what I'm reading from Michael Russo and some other, I guess, just NHL national reporters. I saw last night that Buffalo wanted somebody bigger than the size of Marco Rossi, which, if you've watched or listened to this show before, that tends to be the theme centering around Marco Rossi.
Including with Bill Guerin.
Including with his own team, yes. But also, they were adamant on getting a right-handed shooting defenseman back in the return. I'm using my own speculative mind here, saying they probably said, you have David Jiricek, and we know you haven't seen him, and you just acquired him, and he's been hurt for you at the later part of the season. But that's who we want. I'm gonna guess Bill Guerin said we can't do that, and I don't blame him. You traded what feels like a haul.
Agree.
If you would have traded David Jiricek and Marco Rossi for JJ Peterka to then sign him to let's just say the 5-year, $7.7 million deal, I think Bill Guerin would have gotten fleeced. That, like, if you look at it just on paper, you're like, okay, for sure. But if you, like I said, we're in the realm of time where I think you don't see David Jiricek, the asset, as just one guy. He is a first round, a second round, third round, fourth round pick. Like, he is a multiple asset guy here still.
Yes. Yeah.
So that would have been, I think, an absolute travesty for the Wild. So I don't mind them missing out. Yes, they did miss out because I think this would have been a player, but also we've talked about it before. You can sign somebody equal to or more proven than JJ Peterka in free agency come July 1st.
Here's my problem, though. And we talked about this with Jesse Pierce about 3 weeks ago. My problem is this. If they did indeed offer that package, but we know for a fact that it's being reported that that Rossi was offered up, what is Rossi going to get you then? Like if they said, okay, Marco's great, but for Peterka, who is it's an apples to apples age thing, right? Because they're both RFAs. So you said, okay, we want to move Rossi in like a future, like we'll give you something else. We'll sweeten it up. If they said, no, we want a right-handed shot defenseman who you just acquired for a complete haul and Marco Rossi is not necessarily the star of the trade. See, this is my problem. I think he's so devalued now that I don't know. Like, he's not going to. He should be traded on sort of an equal basis. And if you have to throw in a draft pick or a middling prospect, but age, the way I see this now, if you want to dump him, you're going to have to actually pay way too much. I don't see how, unless there's something they've got up their sleeve. How do you win the Marco Rossi trade, or at least come out of it feeling good?
They've shot themselves in the foot on this, and I think it goes back to the playoffs where you buried him on the fourth line.
That's totally it. It's not. It's not the word of mouth. It's the playoffs.
Totally you're playing poker, and instead of like cards close to the chest, you flip them around, and you're saying, "Hey, I have a full house here. Like, you know exactly what I have. Can you beat this hand?"
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
It's terrible.
The playoffs, and look, yes, they have not helped themselves with what's gotten out publicly, but the playoffs made their bed. When you demote that guy, he was your second leading point getter.
Yes.
I believe he was third in goals. He, by the way, also got his ass routinely kicked. Is he as big as you would like? Absolutely not. But he never once did I say, you know what? He ain't that. He don't want it. And there's been a lot of guys in Wild history that I've watched and said, he don't want it. And you took him, and I think you could have justified a third line demotion. I think you could have said, Hartman's playing so well that we're going to move him to the second line. He's playing great. And we are going to move Marco Rossi down bottom six, but he's the third line guy. But you moved him to the fourth line. And then today, you went and traded the guy that you used on the third line, Freddy Gaudreau, sent to Seattle for a 2025 fourth round pick. So the Wild now has another chip in the draft on Saturday. But, I mean, I keep coming back to the word bungled. They've bungled this. And now, if you do not want to pay Marco, if you do not want to keep him, I don't know how you come out of a trade saving face.
I'll go back to Michael Russo's recent article today, touching, because he kind of sheds a little light on maybe some behind-the-scenes contract talk between the Wild and Rossi. That may be news for some people. I think we all know parts of this, though. The Wild initially offered Rossi a 5-year, 25, so 5x5. That was not accepted. Him and his team countered with shorter term at a higher AAV, and that was not accepted. The Wild apparently have no interest in offering Rossi a longer term in the $6 million or $7 million range. So the 7x7 that I think I've talked about, that I think a lot of people, even on this show, we've talked about it, that kind of matches the previous Matt Boldy deal. That seems to be not even in the conversation for the Minnesota Wild, despite I think that being relatively fair.
And I think Russo reported a couple of weeks ago that the Wild did go back with a bridge offer and that the Rossi camp, based on the fact he was demoted to the fourth line, said no, thank you, because if you bridge him and then you demote him again, good luck with that contract, that next contract. So why they didn't just work out a bridge like that would have been, you don't need to do 7 years. You don't need to do 8 years. Hell, you don't need to do 5 years. Why didn't they just work out, like when this was all unfolding, a 3-year bridge?
They offered it. Apparently that bridge deal was offered at an AAV of less than $5 million as well, which
you got to go 5. I mean, you've got the money too, right? Like
you'd think so.
But now you're screwed. But now you're screwed. At least if you don't demote them and you can't come to a contract agreement and you put them on the third line, I think you can trade them, and I don't think it's going to be awful. Now, again, unless they have something up their sleeve, which is possible, I don't see, like, now you literally have Buffalo throwing it back in your face, and it's Buffalo.
Yeah,
it's a hellhole from a National Hockey League standpoint.
Yes, it's like the places
city,
where
great Bills fans.
It's the place where like good prospects and playoff dreams go to die.
It's Siberia.
Yeah,
like you're literally sending them to hockey Siberia. Again, I don't mind the city. It's fine. It's a nice little town. It's great Bills fans. Yeah. Well, there's some I can't stand. Houston. Don't ever expand to Houston. Terrible city, terrible town. But
Atlanta.
Yeah. So okay. A couple more things for you here.
So just to also recap.
Yeah.
If now they're still looking to move, and you're going to have to, I think, overpay. That means that either your second rounder this year is not safe if you want to make a move that actually moves the needle for a team. Your 2026 first round is not safe, as well as the 2026 third rounder. And maybe even if you really have to sweeten it, the 2027 first rounder. So we're talking 3 drafts from now. But I would rather keep that one in the back pocket for a trade deadline move if you feel you're one piece away. But that's a conversation for like 9 months from now.
I think the trade's going to end up being quite potentially Rossi and Ogren, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, and that feels...
I think there'll be less draft picks. I think there'll be, but I mean, you devalued Rossi so much, you've left yourself in a very, very sticky predicament here.
Yeah.
Couple more things to get to, but before we do that, I want to talk to you about Neos Elite Performance. Are you an athlete that used to love to get out on the golf course or the basketball court, or I don't know, you played softball, and now you know what? Chronic pain is holding you back, and the worst part is it's robbed you of your ability to take part in those sports that you love so much. Neos Elite is going to use their cutting-edge regenerative medicine and cellular IV therapy to get you going again without invasive procedures. This is the best part. No trips to the doctors. The team at Neos, the experts at Neos, they're going to come to you and they are going to get you back to feeling great. They're going to get you back to playing or participating in the sports that you loved, reduce the pain, restore the function. If you reference our flagship show, that's Purple Daily, get $500 off. That's right, $500 off a cellular IV therapy treatment. No surgery, no downtime, just results. NeosElite.com, Neos Elite.com. And H, this weekend, the Zolgads and AJ and his gal are going to be on Sunday in US Bank Stadium. Tell the folks what we've got, because we got quite the event.
Yeah, I mean, and this is quite the event. It's worked out super well. It's CONCACAF Gold Cup quarterfinals coming to US Bank Stadium. So they're taking out the football field. They're putting in a soccer field, the pitch. That's right. The beautiful game. Yogo Bonito is coming to Minneapolis this Sunday. And you've got 2 really good matchups. 3:00. It's the breakfast battle. I'm calling it Canada Maple Syrup versus Guatemala Coffee. Canada, Guatemala kicks off at 3. And then you have USA, Costa Rica, led by Mauricio Pochettino. That kicks off at 6:00. Both those matches should be really tough battles, and USA was cruising in their group stage. So now if they can continue that success, they're looking to move on to the semifinals, and it should be a really fun weekend in Sunday inside of US Bank Stadium. 1 ticket, and here's the kicker, Judd. We both got 1 ticket for the day, but both of those games fall under that 1 ticket. So all you have to do is go Ticketmaster.com or go online for more info to goldcup.org/tickets. Get your tickets for Sunday. 2 matches, 1 ticket. That's all you need. CONCACAF Gold Cup.
Outstanding. Okay, so Gaudreau gets traded to the Kraken in what looks like a cost-cutting move. I have no problem with this for, as I said before, 2025 4th-round pick on Saturday. I like this, if nothing else, because it removes the temptation to rely on a guy that it felt like John Hines started to use as a crutch. I'll go back again, not to complain as much about the Rossi factor here, but Freddy Gaudreau in the playoffs did nothing, and seemingly a great human being, great guy, which is awesome.
Yes,
but the reality was, it was time. It was time, and so I applaud this trade. I'm curious to see what the freed up salary cap space does. So they were going to have around approximately $16 million under the cap. What are they going to be now, Age?
So they are going to sit right now actually with $23.633 million.
Okay.
And that is without re-signing, obviously, a Marco Rossi. That's out re-signing a Declan Chisholm, who is very expected to be re-signed by the team. And that's without an Guerin or a Juracek or a Zibuiam currently against the cap. So with all that offsets to a little under 18 million. I think it's projected about 17.7 is what they're looking at for into July 1st, any trades to work with. So it's a contract dump that actually makes me think they either figure out, we need to create a couple extra $1 million to sign a premier winger, or we don't know exactly yet. And what our trade is going to be. Maybe they have a couple offers for a Rossi deal. And so if we're going to be acquiring term back, we want to leave ourselves a little bit of a runway in case something does run over and we have to work things out and acquire stuff differently.
So the rumor is that they're going to be aggressive in the Brock Besser market on Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
That's the prevailing thought. And he'll be the winger, the scoring winger that they sign. This does not address the center.
No.
Okay, here's a thought.
Okay.
Do you, I think you do, sweeten a package up for Tage Thompson? Will Buffalo trade him? Like, what center do you pursue? I mean, clearly, unless John Tavares is going to sign here, and I'm still going to bank on him going back to Toronto. Jamie Benn this morning on Thursday went back to Dallas. No surprise there. But unless Tavares is not just in your sight, but almost locked up, which, by the way, if he escapes Toronto, there's going to be a few teams there. Sam Bennett almost certainly going back to Florida. Sam Bennett ain't coming here. So on the center market, what do we see here? Because you've got to have, after the way that Billy talked and just seeing what we've seen, you've got to, if you don't come out of this period with a center that's a top legitimate six guy who's good, I don't know how you're going to spin that successfully.
I was playing around with the cap wages, great site that has taken over from Cap Friendly since I want to say the Capitals ruin that for everybody.
Yep.
Everybody's
Capital
fun.
Friendly.
There's I think a way to probably make a trade for Tage Thompson still, and it's going to require a Rossi and Ogren, like we've talked about, as like a standard piece, but you're probably, I think, going to have to part with a mainstay defenseman as well, for the sake of the simulation that I was just kind of tinkering, because there's zero implications for what I do, and I don't have to face any backlash like Bill Guerin potentially would. But I threw in a Jonas Brodin. It's with his term, all three of them, and then what I did was getting back Bowen Byram, who is an RFA, who they have expressed being able to potentially trade, and then somebody would sign.
He was a huge prospect with Colorado a couple of years ago.
Yes, and he just came off his first full season, or essentially full season. So there is sort of similar to Brodin, injury woes, but he's younger. He's expecting a 6 or 7 year deal. The Wild, I guess, if you're taking out a Brodin who's making, I think, $6 million a year, you'd be able to afford it. Not to kill any moods about some of the top six center stuff, but going back to the recent Athletic article from Michael Russo following up on the missing out on JJ Peterka, he does mention that the Wild have inquired about New York Islanders JG Pajot, who is 1 year remaining at $5 million AAV. He's 32 years old. And unfortunately, he does kind of seem like a guy that is right up Billy Guerin and the Wild's alley, he's really good on faceoffs, which I love. He's decent on the penalty kill. That being said, if you're trading for a center, and I see that JG Pajot is the guy who's getting the return.
5 years ago, yes.
Mind.
I'm all in.
Back when he was with, I want to say Ottawa. Absolutely. I would love that.
The Islanders, yeah. Boy, that's going to underwhelm. I mean, you know what's funny? I can see it totally, but oh my gosh, it doesn't do much for me.
No, it doesn't. It does open up a slot though with depth wise, either a Dania Yurov that creates an easy route for him to be a bottom 6 center, or are they expecting a potential call up to the big show for either a Hunter Haight or a Riley Height? Unfortunately, that doesn't fit the big center that I think everybody's hoping for. They're both 5'10", but some AHL work, I want to say, for Riley Height last year Hunter Haight last year.
Sure.
Both H's, so it's
it's very confusing.
34 points in 67 games with the Iowa Wild. Riley Height's coming off another incredible year with the Prince George Cougars. He played 60 games, 90 points for him last season. Obviously, a step up to the NHL would be quite the tempo change, but maybe they're thinking one of those guys is really going to shine. That being said,
give him a chance.
That's the thing. Based on what I know about this team, they're going to see him say, you know what, there's some potential there. Let's bury him back in Iowa.
Chris Finch and John Hines are the same guy. Yes, if you tell me, you know what the hell, we're going to give him a chance, and we think he has top 6 potential, and we are going to give him a real chance. I'm like, okay. I mean, the Pajot thing, yes, I could totally see it. The Tage Thompson or somebody like that, okay, that solves the problem though too.
And that's a bona fide 1C.
Right, exactly. They're hard to get. I mean, your package, I would do that for a bona fide 1C. Unfortunately, you've taken Rossi and tanked his value. Yeah. But yeah, boy, I could totally see it though. I could totally see it. And with those centers, I don't know. And yeah, I don't know. I don't trust John Hines to play guys, young guys.
No, they have shown us they don't trust them. And granted, the most recent bias of there is that it was the playoffs, so they do have the crutch on. Well, it's a huge stage. We want to go with the veteran. But when that veteran's name, no offense, is John Merrill, I would rather side with Aziz Bouillon,
I'd rather have him screw up.
Exactly. I would rather have him.
John Merrill can do too.
Yes, they're both going to make mistakes.
John Merrill was very capable, as he proved. And we tried to absolve him. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't it. Okay, but he was on the ice for a huge goal against. As was your fourth line with. Yeah, I have reservations here. I like the fact they freed up more cap room, but I'm very curious. I'm sort of with you. If we flip record on in the next couple of days, talking about a JG Pajot trade, do I think it's the end of the world? No. Do I think it's what they set out to do? Absolutely not.
No. Speaking of flipping on the pod here the next couple of days, I think there's a potential that we do something maybe tomorrow night or Saturday, because there is a route for the Wild to, as much as I would hate to initially see Marco Rossi plus whatever else traded for a first round pick and whatever pick and blah, blah, blah. But then if that is immediately turned on draft night, Friday, for an actual player and a team that wants to move up, and maybe Buffalo wants to move up, blah, 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 and that's how you get your Tage Thompson, then that's understandable. I think the next couple of days you're either going to see a draft day move that involves Marco Rossi, because it just feels more and more inevitable that they don't want him come opening night.
Contract thing got screwed up because, again, they should have just bridged it originally.
Yes.
They should have worked out a bridge, paid him a little bit more, but on a bridge, that's a short-term thing. My whole thing in life, contract-wise, is term.
Yes.
It's not necessarily money. I think term's your most important thing. Yeah. Which, again, why, if I'm Kirill and if you get JG Pajot, I'm doing 4 or 5 years tops.
If your answer, I wouldn't want to do more than 4 personally.
No, but I'm saying if you're
Kirill,
if I'm Kirill and I'm sitting in, I don't know where, Mother Russia, and I get wind on my phone that JG Pajot is I'm not doing. I'm not getting near 8 years. I'm so upset. I'm not getting near 8 years. I'm out.
This is going to be a weirdly busy next week for the Wild, because I do think, despite not having a first round pick, you're going to hear like their name floating around with teams and potential rumors for what they do on Friday night, and then into next Tuesday, July 1st, you're going to be keeping your eye on Kirill. You're going to be keeping an eye on Besser. You're going to be keeping an eye. I would love them to still be in on Nikolai Ehlers, despite being a year older. He's just more dynamic than Brock Besser and more proven, in my opinion. Does he want to stay in the division? I'm not sure. It's a weird, for a team that shouldn't have a lot going on, they do have a lot going on.
They have money.
week, and they do have money. Yes,
some of it's really good.
Yeah.
The Rossi thing to me is just confusing, though. I mean, that's bad. I don't like how it's being handled. I don't like anything about it.
Awful.
But as far as like the activity goes, it's been a long time since this team has had this freedom. I mean, a year ago, Yakov Trenin was your splash signing. Yakov Trenin. Anyway.
And he's going to be back on the team.
Okay, so we might be on tomorrow. If something happens, we can certainly, and then certainly monitor throughout the weekend. Sunday, I would expect not to be a thing, and then Tuesday will be a big day.
Tuesday will be a
I think
big
Tuesday.
day.
I think Tuesday we flip the live on. I think we go live at some point.
I think tomorrow night, or maybe even like a Saturday morning, if we see a Tage Thompson name roll across it, we'll gauge on the name. If it's Pajot, I think we'll record. But if it's a more notable name,
we'll have to take out you swearing, you dropping F-bombs if it's Pajot, JG Pajot. All right. Judd's Hockey Show. We are done, at least for now. He's AJ. I'm Judd. We'll see you later.